Thank you, Leanne. And I guess the one thing that after listening to all the speakers this morning, that I heard in my introduction was the 20,000 hours of driving a tractor. If any of those other speakers had known that before now, they would have kicked me out of the table, because that's totally opposite of what every one of them said about don't touch the soil. So anyway, I'm a farm girl, but now I'm kind of in a ranch state, which is okay. Farmers and ranchers can get along, and just know, I know there is a difference, but if I use the word farm, I'm probably doing it to save time, instead of saying farmers and ranchers, or farms and ranchettes. So anyway, as we get my talk pulled up here, I want to talk about the big picture. We heard about the little picture, these little animals over here this morning, and I don't know what they were called. This is the little dinosaurs. So this is the little picture, these little microbes. I'm going to talk a little bit about the big picture as soon as we get it up and going. The real big picture from space. Now, when people think of agriculture, they don't necessarily think of space. And when people have asked me in my 29 years, where do you work? And I say NAS. The first 3 or 4 years I said NAS. Nowadays I don't say NAS because all anybody ever said after I said NAS was, oh, are you an astronaut? Well, no, that's NASA. That's not NAS. National Ag Statistics Service is NASS. And so, how do I page down? Okay. All right. So NASA. And then how in the world is any of that connected to agriculture? Well, NAS helped NASA invent the whole satellite technology and the infrared and all of the Google Earth. Jay showed us a picture of Google Earth. We were down on the ground truthing, as early as the 1960s. NASA was putting up satellites to try to read what was on the ground. And the most basic satellite technology is, the abbreviation is NDVI, but it's a greenness factor. Is what's on the ground green, or is it black, or is it yellow, or what color is it? Well, NAS was on the ground saying, this is a cotton field, this is rangeland, this is a coal mine, this is a winter wheat field, this is a summer fallow field, okay? And satellite, over the decades, we learned that there's different colors for different crops or different land uses. And so, we have been working with NASA as long as I've been alive. Some of their scientists come work for us so they understand what we're trying to do with the satellite technology. Some of our staff go work for NASA every once in a while. I never worked for NASA, but there is, at Northwest College in Powell, Wyoming, there's an ag economics professor whose dad was one of those ground truth people. He did his master's study building this relationship between NAS and NASA. Okay, so what does that have to do with us here today? Well, as the internet was developed in the late 1980s, and then you got to be able to send more than just a basic email. You could send pictures, the computers. The computers, I think this is a signal to talk faster so we can all go to lunch. It became possible to transmit large quantities of data to other people. Well, the Secretary of Agriculture, we have been using this data since the late 1970s in-house. My entire career, and for 10 years before that, I have seen this satellite data, okay? And in my career, I have been the national corn statistician. It was my job to come up with how much corn the United States raised. I need to know the entire country, every production practice, every geographical nuance. Well, that's kind of hard to do, keep it all in your head. But we did it, and we developed tools to be able to track it over time. So that Jay talked about basic tools. I'm not a GIS specialist. I'm not a PhD soil scientist. I'm an agricultural statistician. I live in an applied world. The applied world is variable, and you're doing this stuff in the snow, and it's kind of like farming or ranching. It's the real world out there. But after the 93 Midwest flood and the 97 flood in North Dakota, the Secretary of Agriculture said, you have got to make this technology available to the farmers and ranchers, and you got to make it easy, and it's got to be free. Because I have learned the software to make this stuff. You got to have a pretty good computer, you got to know the software, you got to have the data, you got to know how to handle it. That's not easy, that's not free. So we built these tools. And now all you need is one of two things, a finger or a mouse. And you, as farmers or ranchers or conservation district managers or land managers of any kind, can now use, was that my mouse? Okay, switch. Can now use satellite data. You don't have to know what NDVI stands for. All you need to know is that I want to know how green it is, or I want to know what's growing out there. Jay mentioned this morning biodiversity or changing the crops. John Tanaka just talked about, does it take 30 years to change the forage that's out there, to change the species? I hope in 35 years we could all get rid of cheatgrass. I'm hoping that great-great-grandchildren can see 100 years there's no cheatgrass. I'm not going to bet on it, but it would be nice to see. So we have two products. Go ahead. Out on our website, and I've got handouts in the back, and I've got business cards. We have two products. One is called Cropscape. You know the word landscape? Well, this tells you the crops. It's the only source in the entire world to where we're down on the ground truthing. We use USDA data from the Farm Service Agency, from the Forest Service, and from us to ground truth every single year what happened on that land. Each color represents a crop or pasture or range or a road or a lake or a glacier or something. So every pixel, which in the Midwest is 3 square meters, in the West, in Wyoming, it's 250 square meters. We can tell what is on every single pixel. And we can print it out on a nice big piece of paper so you can see what's going on. This is the state of Wyoming. The first thing you'll notice is there's lots of green. There might be a couple shades of green, but there's a lot of green. That's rangeland and pastures, okay? You see a couple spots of bright pink here and there. That's barley or alfalfa along the rivers, okay? So that's Cropscape. And there's little icons you can get. Acreages, you can get a percentage of the pixel counts, and you can export and import this stuff out to use with your conservation district person or your BLM person or whatever. It's like these. The second tool we have is called Vegscape. And that is looking at just the amount of green that is there. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a football field, it could be cheatgrass, it could be corn. But each one of those is a different green and a different color on the infrared spectrum, and we can tell what it is. And as you go through a growing season, the green changes. And so this map, the browner it is, the drier it is. The more yellow or more green it is, the wetter it is. There's more stuff growing out there. This boundary right here is the Thunder Basin National Grassland in northeast Wyoming. And I was talking to the Wyoming wool growers. Well, I've been talking about these two tools in Wyoming because there's a real vacuum of knowledge or being able to see what's growing out way far. One of the speakers this morning mentioned, well, you got to graze your entire ranch, not just the part by the water. Well, as ranchers or farmers or conservation district people or BLM people or Forest Service people, do you get out to every single square inch of every single pasture, every single week of every single year? No. Nobody will. No, it's impossible because we're talking about vast stretches of land. But a satellite can see. So you may not be able to get up over the mountain to see what's happening. Is cheatgrass coming on in early March? But the satellite can see it. And we have an archive. There's two things about these tools, or three things about these tools, that are unique in the world of agriculture and satellite data. Number one, they're easy. Anybody can do it. I can do it. Number two is we have an archive. Do you remember? I just turned 50. Remembering is getting a lot easier not to do, whether I want to or not. Okay? Do you remember what your land looked like every week, every year, going back to year 2000? Well, was that dry year 2007 or was that dry year 2005? Or what about the flood? Was that the 2013 flood or was that the 2015 flood? Well, this will tell you we've got weekly data, and you can compare back to year 2000. That's 17 years, and it will go forward. I asked, can it be longer? But no. Slide, please. And then the other thing that you can do, let's go to the next slide, is you can compare 2 years. So you pull up, this is Weston County, Wyoming. You can pull up 2014, 2016. This is the exact same piece of land. It's about October 1st or so. And